thank everybody for coming out tonight, and I want to welcome you here. I'm Judy Kennedy, I'm the mayor. I'm not going to be doing a whole lot of talking tonight because you don't want to listen to this, and I'm not going to be able to squeak it out for too long. But I have here with me Paul Rickey, who is our Lynn's Director of Emergency Management, and Alan and Thad are representatives from MEMA. When we had those floods a couple of Saturdays ago, that Monday, Paul and I declared an emergency declaration and contacted MEMA and asked them what could be done to help out our residents who had suffered damages in the floods. So we met with MEMA that Wednesday, and as a result, this meeting was put together to offer up the types of assistance that MEMA may be able to provide to residents and business owners who were affected by those floods Saturday morning. I'm going to turn this over to the representatives from MEMA so that they can explain in more detail what they'll be able to offer and how to go about getting that information and process. So now, it's all yours.
Good evening, everyone. Normally when there's a disaster, there's assistance available and through the federal government, but the thresholds are really high. It's in the millions of dollars. But there's one program that appears that may qualify in this case, and that is the SBA loans. On a high level, the SBA loans, we have to have 40% uninsured losses from 25 homes or businesses, or a combination of the two. I'm not sure who had what for insurances. We can count multiple families or multiple units per residence per home, as long as they were not immediate family members. I'm going to turn it over to Thad, who will explain a little bit in a little more detail. And then what we'll do is we'll gather some information to see if we meet that threshold. And if we do, then we'll look at doing the small business loans and having somebody come in to work with you on that. Thad?
Yeah. So thank you. Post-disaster, the programs that are available to homeowners and private businesses that give you your immediate relief are going to be through the Small Business Administration, and they come in the form of low-interest loans. Those are and SBA. Although we won't necessarily, we will not meet the FEMA threshold for what we call a federal disaster, as I'm sure you have heard about on TV going on all over the country and in our territories at the moment. We can potentially meet the threshold to make these small SBA loans available to you. So, like we said, what we want to do, our purpose here tonight is to A, answer questions that you may have, and B, also to try to begin the process of collecting that information to see that if we can ask for the declaration and make that threshold and make that relief available to you. So just again, high level, it is, we need to identify 40 units, as we call them, which could be multiple units in a building. 25 with a 40% uninsured loss. So if you were no insurance or underinsured compared to your losses, that's the information that will be gathered, and we'll ask the Small Business Administration to basically turn on this program for us. Really, that is it, sort of in a nutshell. We brought this form, which is real easy. You can fill it out tonight and leave it with us with your contact information. And now, if you could add your email address to it, it doesn't have a spot, we'd appreciate that very much. And if you don't have that information tonight, you can get it, you can take it with you. You can also take my card, which will give you my email address, and I'll put you, that'll get you into the system. We can, at MEMA, start gathering that information from you. So, unless anyone has anything else, we can take your questions.
So just to be clear, the assistance, there's no cash assistance, it's just loan assistance?
This is strictly loan assistance.
Okay. And if I am not interested in a loan, am I still useful to you, giving you my information on what was not insured?
Yes.
Okay.
So we can use that information to meet the threshold. You're not bound to take.
Okay. So I should fill out this form for you.
Right. We want everybody, because you can help your neighbors then that
Gotcha.
may want to take advantage of it. Because once it gets turned on, then full disclosure, it is a loan process. You have to qualify just like you would for any other loan. But the terms are they're in your favor. They can be long-term, low interest. So
Depending on the credit rating, it can be up to 30 years for these loans to be paid back. So they're very low interest, very long-term loans. Yes, Mayor?
We have several city councilors here, quite a few. Ward 5, Diana Chakutis, Council President Darren Sear, Ward 7 Councilor Jay Walsh, Ward 6 Councilor Peter Capano. Are there others here? I don't see anybody else, but Peter Capano, our Ward 6 Councilor, who was one of the heavily affected areas on the Linway, has a question.
I appreciate you putting this on there. I appreciate you guys coming. I just had a couple questions. So, the opportunity for a loan is great, but I was wondering how you determine the threshold for getting assistance. Because I remember a big flood, the Mother's Day flood, a few years ago, and I know residents in my ward got assistance for that. This flood is very similar, in some cases worse, than that. And, I know there was quite a few people. I mean, could easily build probably a chamber up there. We had more time to get the word out about people that were affected. So, I just didn't know what the difference was.
I can answer that for you. The difference was a larger geographic area, and the Mother's Day floods, if you remember correctly, covered multiple counties as well. And there's FEMA requires a certain threshold for each county, and then a total threshold for the state, and that's in the millions of dollars per county and by the state. I don't believe that this disaster will meet those thresholds.
Right, so not to bore you with it, but it's a per capita, per person threshold of damage you have to meet for the county and then for the state as a whole. So for the county we're in here, it was just under $10 million for this event. So those are uninsured losses. So if we could meet those thresholds, certainly everyone would revisit that and ask for a declaration from FEMA. But, in the meetings that we had after the event, it was determined very quickly that it would meet the threshold to ask for federal, your FEMA disaster.
If it was determined, though, that it was that much uninsured damage, then people would qualify for assistance.
Well, it would it would mean that then the governor could ask the president for a formal declaration, which would then turn on potentially public and public assistance for municipal losses and also individual assistance, the typical FEMA, what you hear about in the news, the FEMA individual assistance.
So basically, an educated guess that there wasn't that much damage.
Right, and
there's no one submitted any figures, to add it all up.
Right. But again, there's no, it's not like we missed it. It missed the boat on asking for it. If, the city and the town got together and looked at it again. But typically, the damage has to be more widespread to make the whole declaration, because it's by the county, even though we know here counties don't mean much. But that's how FEMA looks at it. It's the amount of damage per county, based on the number of people.
All right, it's one more thing, I'll stop. So if there was, say there was, I don't want to get off the subject too much, but say there was one of those microbursts in a concentrated area that wiped out, some houses and some businesses, and some flooding along with that, because that doesn't encompass a number of counties that would not qualify for FEMA assistance.
Just enough damage in that location it was in. I'll give you an example. Tornadoes are a prime example. I've been working in the disaster business for a long time, because even before I came to Massachusetts to work for MEMA. And tornadoes typically don't get declared unless they hit an urban area, right? Because yes, it's horrible, but if it doesn't hit a concentrated enough area to do the damage, it doesn't generate enough damage to meet those thresholds.
But it still potentially add up to $10 million.
Yes.
And this was a small area
That's correct.
that affected a lot of people. And I don't know how much damage, but
Well, they did, and this is more of your world, but the tours were done, afterwards, and those discussions were had, and then certainly the state would be happy to revisit those.
Yeah, if we can come close to that threshold, we would revisit and do, again, individual visits and so on. But myself and Emergency Management Director, we toured after the storm and looked at how much damage was there, and it didn't look like it would be close to that level.
And even though nobody wants to hear this, is just going forward, a lot of this had to do with the Strawberry Brook area. That's, that seems like it's an ongoing problem, something we might need to address in the future, because every time, we've had rain events in the past where Strawberry Brook kicks in, and it's that neighborhood. So, you know, talking about mitigation measures and things that we can do maybe going forward so this doesn't happen again. Doesn't help right now, I mean, but, you know, it's something that we should probably discuss.
Alley Street, Oakville Street.
Strawberry Brook's not down.
Not just
We can look at,
Ainsworth.
we can look at mitigation items at a different date. That's not going to help with this, but it's something that we can also look at as a way to get to it. I'm sorry, we'll get right with this. Somebody back here was
So
first.
my question is, it seems like it's localized, so we determine why it happened and how we're going to prevent it from happening again.
Well,
That's a weather event. It's, go ahead, Paul.
we got a lot of rain in a very short period of time. And going forward, like I said, I'm not saying Strawberry Brook area was the only place affected, but that seems like it had a fairly big impact.
Something's missing. We haven't really determined, what's it, problem with sewage, drainage?
Oh, we got, I believe it was, I don't know, do we?
3.92 inches
3.92 inches.
in 2 hours.
In 2 hours. I mean, the drainage systems just can't, that's a lot of water being dumped in a real short period of time.
Was it high tide?
Excuse me?
Was it high tide? I live on Orchard Street, as I understand it, the water comes down in that area just before it goes out to the ocean. And is it high tide?
I don't believe it was, I'll have to check, but I don't believe it was high tide. I mean, I can go back and check. I don't believe it was high tide during that time.
It was.
It was?
They were saying high tide, actually.
I mean,
Yeah, I don't know how much the tide had an effect on this. It was.
of course it is it something like where, you know, you couldn't let it go out because the water was there?
Yeah, I mean, those, now you're starting to get into, I mean, these are like DPW issues, you know, the water and sewer authority, you know, something that I can't definitively speak on because that's not, but it's, going forward, it's stuff that, yeah. Yeah, we definitely can, yeah, as far as, you know, what, you
Because I'm
know.
afraid if it happens again.
No, absolutely.
I could give you a little information on Utah Avenue, because we had some problems on Goldthwaite Street and French Street, which are in that general area. That is actually a bit of a bowl. It's one of the low points of land in the city of Lynn. And the drainage comes from the hills that basically surround there, from the Highlands, from Western Avenue, Route 107.
Excuse me, the mayor's parking, can you please keep it down?
From Manning Field. And water and sewer had to get involved. And they did change the pipes that collected the downhill runoff and enabled us to mitigate the, that enabled us to mitigate the flooding that was occurring in that area. So it's very possible that Utah is going to have the same mitigation take place. However, it is the Water and Sewer Commission, and we can certainly set up neighborhood meetings with the ward counselor.
Well, I think we should someone should notify the city, so why
It's,
get insurance?
it's just not that simple. They have to do the engineering and so forth. Make sure there's no clogs in there, make sure the pipe sizes are appropriate. So it is a little more complicated than that based on the Goldthwaite and French Street stuff. But, yeah, but I just want to make sure that we keep this focused on the MEMA and what MEMA will be able to do to help. That was an extraordinary event. We don't normally get almost 4 inches of rain in such a short period of time.
So,
So
yeah.
it's an anomaly, but
We
we
want
want
to get back to this here,
get
but
this
just so
going.
you know, we can review this again with the town, with the emergency management director in the mayor's office, but we have a mitigation grant that we give out. It's filtered through FEMA again, and it's something that can be used to change the topography or maybe raise the roadway, do something in there that will help with the flooding. But we can look at that as a project for the town. But let's get back to this here, just so we can keep on target here. I'm sorry, this lady was first.
Thank you. I have flood insurance, but I had a lot of damage outside of my house. My home insurance doesn't cover it, flood insurance doesn't cover it. I'm looking for financial relief. Now, I have home insurance and I have flood insurance, so I'm not gonna qualify for that loan because you're looking for uninsured people.
We're looking for 40% uninsured. So if your insurance covered 35% of your damages, you would qualify.
Okay.
You help us at the threshold.
Thank you for explaining that. Thank you. I live on downtown and Monroe Street, which is really bad. Besides the property, how about our cars? Because everybody wanted our street.
Yeah.
Personal
We've
property.
got a lot of calls about cars.
Cars, cost us more money. We have to pay
Deductible, down payments, our payments are higher. My poor friend had 5 payments left and gone. So everyone in our street, the cars were swept away that are going into buildings. So that's the only thing, is the cars.
Personal property.
Yeah, no, unfortunately, autos are considered personal property, not contents or residential.
Personal property is good.
Okay.
Yeah.
What if it's parked in your driveway?
Right,
Oh, you're-
my parking lot,
correct.
I
So-
mean,
our parking lot was,
Yeah, so I misspoke there. So that that could be used towards that threshold.
okay.
So
It's
any
personal
uninsured,
property.
Deductible is also uninsured.
Okay.
and I'm actually on a flood zone. There are some buildings on Monroe Street that are, some are, I'm on it.
Right.
But it's just when I need it. We don't have it for the master. So does any of my flood insurance cover, my basement's totally destroyed. So I'm not, I've been calling, no one's getting back to me on it. I don't know if any of my flood insurance is gonna cover it.
You know, I don't think any of us could really, get into the weeds on insurance policies. You know, the fact that you haven't, I encourage anyone that thinks that they're anywhere near a flood zone to get flood insurance, even if you're just, 500 years on it. But I don't think I can answer that question. If it covers personal property inside a common basement is what you're asking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the one issue you might, I just want to back up to the vehicle, the one issue you might run into with that is not through your homeowners, but your vehicle's insurance company.
Which we did, we went through that, I mean, we didn't get.
And you were not-
We didn't get as much as they're supposed to, and we know their cars work. So now they have to go get rental cars, and we have to, get another car, and they have to put down payments on. Some people don't have the money, so now they're stuck in a car.
So, I'm sorry, somebody, I saw somebody over here, start with you.
The threshold calculations that you guys use, are they publicly available? I'm just curious how
It
the
is.
numbers work.
If you go to the mass.gov/MEMA website, there's information right on that website about the SBA loans.
No, I mean, the ones that you've determined to reach that threshold, I'm curious how you calculated that figure.
Oh, you mean for the FEMA disaster?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's available online. Every state is, it's set by federal statute,
Not what the threshold
No.
is, what the variables you use to plug in.
Oh.
You're saying after we review it, sir?
No, you said we didn't meet that threshold, but you determined the figure. How do you come to
You didn't
how did
go in
you
any
come to-
basements, you didn't look at any damage, how do you know?
No, they said their initial assessment made them believe that they wouldn't
Right.
meet the threshold, but they won't know their final determination until all of the people here submit their information. And then they had said, if it looks like it's close to that $10 million, they can revisit it and ask the governor to ask the federal government for the FEMA declaration.
Yeah.
But-
It's a small geographic area, I understand, but you have Boston Street, a lot of commercial properties, the street that I'm on, a lot of commercial properties, Commercial Street, a lot of commercial properties, residential properties. I don't think $10 million is a large stretch.
But remember, it has to be 10 million uninsured. Uninsured, that's the key component there.
Flood insurance, it's very expensive. And as far as SBA loans, the SBA loans are available 365 days a year without a flood. And they pierce the corporate veil. I've tried SBA loans before. You have to personally guarantee, any corporate shareholder has to personally guarantee any SBA loan. So it's really not a loan.
These are disaster SBA loans. They're a little different than your other day-to-day SBA loans.
And they offer the same thing, and it's a book book like this you fill out, and everyone on the signing person is if you don't have appropriation.
Oh, not when they do it for the disasters. They sit down with you and it's a small application.
When we had the event in 2012, I sat down with them, and they put the book on the table, here you go, signed personally.
As a
I'm just
business,
not sure
sir?
whether we leave this.
Was that as a business?
Yes.
You, any info on that?
No, I mean, it is, you know, the loan is, like John said, it is a loan with all of the qualifications of a normal loan, as far as whether you know, swearing personally for a corporate loan. Again, I don't know the details down in the weeds. You've been through it, you probably know
I've
more
been
than
through
we
it right
do.
here for a flood, right here 5 years ago, which leads me to a problem that we have here in Lynn that I don't think anyone's addressing, and I don't think we're gonna get to it in this meeting about the combined overflow with the sewer. It seems to be a recurring problem here.
Well, now that, you know, I could speak to a little bit, mitigation and recovery is actually my section, right? So mitigation is near and dear to my heart. So as we started to say earlier, there are mitigation grant programs that are out there. When events like this are triggered, people in my section start to look at, are there mitigation projects that can be funded by the federal government that make sense. Now those, of course, they're federal programs, right? So they have their own whole set of parameters you have to do. They have to have engineering, you have to do what we call benefit cost analysis, see if they're cost effective. But those discussions, you know, the city and the state are already proactively having those discussions to see if those type of projects are feasible for the future. They don't happen overnight. You know, that's why we wanted to keep this meeting, you know, focused on what can we do for you now.
I don't want to get into the weeds of that. What's the action plan to actually get a true assessment of the damage that was done here so we can meet the threshold?
Give us your information. Anyone that's here, give us your information, and if you don't have it, send it to us.
Not to belabor that, but I've been in my building for 29 years. 29 years I've been told that they've been mandated to fix the drainage and with a split drainage to separate the sources. And so you're saying mitigate for future. What is the future? It's been 29 years that they've been telling me they're going to do that. On a bad rain from Bennett Street to Alley Street, my building's 240 feet long and it never went more than 50, 60 feet. This one, at 208 feet, it was still a foot above at my back dock, so.
Sir, Dave Ellis is here, the Commissioner for Water and Sewer.
Yes.
If he would like to weigh in on this.
I used to be the Ward 6 city councilor. I worked on this issue for 20 years. Peter Capano, another commissioner on the commission, is here. He's also the Ward 6 councilor. We have entered into a consent decree where we, in a court finding, we agreed to an agreement that within 5 years, we have to put a pump station in. So we'll have a forced main. We're going to use a main that's already there for emergency purposes, so we don't have to run a conduit across the Lynway. That will give significant ability beyond a gravity system which we have now that was built part of it in the Shepherd Street or like that back in the 1800s over the river. That'll allow us to actually cause suction and force water out into the outer harbor. So we have that permission. There's penalties if we do not make the deadlines. We have to make them. I think there's people on the board that, although some of the staff is pushing to roll back deadlines, we know that that doesn't benefit our community. We need that done also so that it relieves your flooding. Everybody hears about the problems with flooding every night and the hazards that we have with the combined sewer project that we have in that area of the city. We have the first phase we're going to have done is to give the relief. You might take out like 1.5 million gallons of flow doing the separation, but when you have 126 million flood event, or this one was much bigger, this was in the intensity, I measured 4 inches at my house in Pine Hill. It all came within just a matter of a couple hours. So this is probably a historic record for the city for a flood event. But we've all seen bad ones over the recent years. That seems to be getting worse. So we must move forward with that. That will give us relief. We also need that for community development to bring our taxes down and the rates down by having about 2,000 new people in condos built on the Lynway. which set the highest rate for the water usage, commercial rate. We've never had that much construction in the city. And so we said if we knew they would still come to get that quality water services, but it will reduce your rates. It'll give us some money to work with that we don't have. And if we don't put that in, we won't be able to have them tie in because it's too flat here. They have to put their own pump stations. So that does two services, gives relief that the neighborhoods haven't had in a long time. He has worked hard on that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
it's working
okay.
right now.
Right, that, all right.
Yeah.
When you put the pump station in, what areas will that affect that you think it'll help?
Well, because you have, when you get down to the West Lynn neighborhoods, the problem we have, that's where the intercept for both sides of the city, everything comes in, goes to the plant to be treated. That should affect that low-lying area where basically all that's being stored in the neighborhoods and in your basements. And we have to make a plan that relieves that.
Mr. Ellis, I think, because MEMA really wants to stay on track with the processing of this, we really appreciate your talking about it. The Water and Sewer Commission is the entity that is undertaking the consent decree and eventually the mitigation project. So if anybody wants to contact the Water and Sewer Commission to get more information, they'd be able to provide it.
Quick overview of where we're at. We're looking at to get an idea of how much damage there was, how much uninsured losses there were on this event. If we can get to a $10 million threshold, then we can look at going back and asking the governor to declare a disaster and to work through the federal government to get some funding. If we cannot get to that threshold, then we can look at having 25 or more people affected with 40% uninsured losses so that we can look at the SBA loan program, which is a low-interest, long-term loan for disasters. All right, so that's a quick overview of where we're at. We had a number of questions. I believe I promised this gentleman first.
Do you want us to fill these out tonight and pass them in or get them to you?
Either.
If you can fill them out tonight,
I mean, I can
that's
fill that out
great.
tonight, but I got a lot of backup information to show my losses.
I would say just the form tonight.
Just the form. Hold your information, and we'll collect that at a later date. You want
Say that again?
There'll be an email address you can send those
Yeah,
to.
I ran out of cards, but how about this, before we go, I'll give everyone my email address.
We'll put it up there.
Yeah, we'll put it right there.
I'll write it up.
If I spell it out for you once, I can do it a million times.
All right, so we'll put the email address up there, so you can scan and email the forms to Thad. And then we'll collect other supporting documentation as we need it, but first we need to see if we can make these thresholds, just to get to that point. Sir?
So just to clarify, because I'm just a little confused still, we live on Boston Street. We had 7+ cars in our driveway that had over 4 feet of water in them. That's not including our basement that had like 6 feet of water in it. If, for example, say we were to, everyone were to qualify, like the whole flood area were to qualify for the assistance that you guys were talking about, would that only end up helping homeowners and small businesses, or would it help people who have lost like significant damage like our cars?
If you're asking if it covers renters as well, it does cover renters. You don't have to be the homeowner.
Yeah.
You don't have to have renter's insurance, no. If you have a loss, if you're a renter and you have a loss and you don't have insurance, then you probably have 100% of your items are not insured,
So regarding like underinsured vehicles as a renter, is that you're gonna be able to qualify me for a loan if it was outright on car?
Well, we're not qualifying you. This turns on, once we get to this threshold, it turns on the federal program, which is this small business loans, they call it. It was created to help give some type of relief when people can't, or the area can't meet the other threshold, right? You want to tag on to that?
No, right, so if we were to able to meet the FEMA threshold, which is that high, we keep saying $10 million, $10 million. So if we could hit that, then that turns on the FEMA programs, one of which is the individual assistance programs. And that's the financial assistance programs that you're hearing about now, Houston, Florida, Puerto Rico, where it's So, but then below that, if we can't make that threshold, which, you know, we make every attempt to use this information to get there, then the next one below it is the SBA, which is,
And even though it says small businesses, it does
Right.
also cover renters.
It's not just for businesses. It is for renters, it is for homeowners.
right?
It's just through that small business.
In the case of the FEMA program, the first, you know, the one we're trying to get to, the first step with that is they see if you qualify for SBA first.
Okay.
I own a four-family on Camden Street. Camden Street only has one storm drain on the entire street. Literally wiped out my entire basement. So I have an apartment down there and everything else. Now, my insurance will not cover it. It's clearly stated, I have full coverage. It says they do not insure drainage backups due to city or whatever the case is. And there's a pumping station at the end of my street, which I find really hard to understand why that would back up that kind of water through the pipes, come back up through the toilets, and just flood out the entire place. I mean, I freaked out. I had feces, I had everything all over the place. I called them up immediately, they came down. I called up the Water and Sewer Commission. 2 guys came down, plus a supervisor. They were like in an awe, I couldn't believe it. I had more leaves coming out of my toilet system than the foliage on the street. Bottom line is, it wiped me out, and I had black mold growing everywhere. So I expressed my concern. I had to take it under my own and take it out because I have, like I said before, I got people living above me and everything else. I can't have that type of disaster in my house. So when you turn around and you say, first of all, I paid for it, it's all done. I just got it done, I got all the pictures here to turn in from start to finish. But when you turn around and say, if we don't meet the $10 million mark, and then you're gonna come down the ladder, so to speak, then you're gonna turn around and say SBA, I should not have to, personally, I should have to go and apply for a small business loan and have to pay back. This was something that obviously was caused, but it's not my fault that it happened, but yet it seems like I'm gonna be penalized either way and I gotta pay for it. And I don't think I should have to, especially I've already put out close to $18,000 out of my pocket.
So I just want to clarify something for you, so everybody understands this. This is not a state program. It is not the state. We have certain guidelines we have to meet. If we had the money, we'd give it to everybody that had a disaster. We really would, but it's not up to us. It's up to the federal government. In order to get that money from the federal government, we have to meet these certain guidelines, and that's what we're here for. As far as, you know, your issue that you had there, that's nothing that I, like I said, in our job here, that's nothing that we can go back and, I mean, that's something for you to work with the town on, to see what, how it can be mitigated in the future.
Well, the only thing I did with the town, the supervisors at the time, they told me flat out, is their hands are basically tied right now because they only have one storm drain on the entire street, and that storm drain coincides with some of the drainage that's already there for storage. And whatever drainage is there, and it all coincides with the tides. If it's high tide, nothing's going down.
That's correct.
And, again, like I said, I'm on a street that has a pumping station at the end of it now. I don't know, there's gotta be some give somewhere.
Yeah, I would have a conversation with the town again. Again, that's kind of out of our purview, and it's really it's not anything that we can handle. It's nothing that.
I'm just concerned future preference, God forbid something happens again. Oh, this is the second time it's happened. Twice now it's happened on Camden Street. Once the pumping station just flat out died. And everything backed up. I mean, it was coming out the sewer copies. And this is the second one.
Yes, I mean, I don't know what I can say to you. I know. Yeah, but
I'm just concerned future preference.
Yeah.
What happens down the line 6 months when God forbid we have another storm, something happens? What happens then? I'm gonna be out another, what, 16, 18 grand?
No, and it's totally understandable what you're saying. And now it's like going forward, we're gonna have to, me, myself, we're gonna have to sit down with water and sewer, and we're gonna see. But there's always fiscal constraints that we have to, and you know, I know you probably don't wanna hear that right now, but.
But has anyone put anything into play, like, for maybe if something like this would happen again? I mean, be prepared for it at least, or so have like an avenue out to where they might be able to address it immediately before, so to speak, like a disaster happens in a roundabout way? I mean, do they have like
Yeah,
relief
I mean,
pumps or
we,
whatever?
the only thing I could say about this event, as far as knowing that it was coming, we got there was a flash flood watch, which we get all the time in the
Yes.
summer. But this was a flash flood watch, you might as well have said flash flood watch for Lynn, because the storm cell set up right over the city, and it dumped a lot of water on us. And I'm not saying that there's not infrastructure problems that, you know, need to be addressed in the future, but this was a one-off event. Not a one-off event for you guys, because you're putting out $18,000, or, you know, I know there's a lot of money
I'm
involved.
sure it's just
but-
a drop in the bucket compared to some of these other people, but I mean, you know.
Can I offer a suggestion? The city of Lynn has no jurisdiction. The city government, City Hall, has no jurisdiction over the sewer lines and the water conduits in the city. That's all under the jurisdiction of the Water and Sewer Commission. But I would be happy to reach out to Dan O'Neill, the Executive Director of the Water and Sewer Commission, and see if he would be willing to set up a neighborhood informational meeting. We'll advertise it the same way that we advertise this meeting, so that you can all come and ask questions of water and sewer on what they're going to be doing to mitigate it. Because the city of Lynn is simply not in a position to be able to provide a timeline or answers or anything like that. The two of the commissioners are here.
I just wanted to chime in a little bit, because I know digressing a little bit, but just to answer.
And I'm trying to keep the MEMA meeting on track
Yeah,
for MEMA.
I know, but the problem is, with some of the people that are in here, every thunderstorm is a flood with possible sewage in their basements. So just to address that, there is a project, it's a $100 million project. And we had a public hearing here at City Hall a couple of years ago, it was packed, a week before Christmas. And we, you know, a lot of the residents, a lot of people that were here came to that meeting. And the state saw that. There is a federal consent decree right now to do that project. The infrastructure is 100 years old, the sewer pipes are old. We had 2 trucks actually sink into the ground. It was on TV, you know, because of sewage pipe leak and all the dirt went away. We've been fighting to do this for 10 years, and Dave probably 10 years before me, and then finally doing it. It's taken a long time, but I want to tell everyone in this room right now, and I won't digress anymore, because when there's going to be certain votes coming up, and this has to be done, and they're in the design phase right now, they're going out to bid, but there's going to be reluctance by a lot of people in the city and a lot of people at the Water and Sewer Commission not to do this. So everybody in here, if you want this project done, you got to stay in tune about what's going on. We had about 100 people at that meeting, but we had 200 or 300 people there. You know, if you got the local paper against you because they're saying water rates are going to go up for the rest of the city, it's a waste of money, it's for a minority of the city, it's not worth doing. You got to remember that the whole city was done. The whole city was completed, and they stopped when they got to that part of West Lynn, and they never finished. They never separated the sewage from the storm drains, and it's going to be done now. So, you know, it doesn't help these things come from now, we have a storm, but it is going to be done. We're not going to, you know.
Wait, time out. Can we just go back to this here,
Yes,
and
I'm sorry,
then, if
I
you
just
wish to have
want
more
people to know
discussion on
that,
that.
they didn't know that.
If you want to have more discussion on that after, that's great, but I want to get back and answer
I
everyone's
understand,
questions.
but refer to the Water and Sewer Commission, I just want to address that.
I appreciate that, thank you.
Is there a deadline for folks to get this information, or is there a certain window of time before that threshold closes up?
I didn't hear the beginning of your question.
Is there a deadline for folks to get this paperwork in?
So we purposely didn't want to set a deadline, you know, because we don't want to, we'll take, if we don't, as soon as we make the threshold, we make the threshold, right? So, but, you know, I would say the sooner the better. As soon as we can prove that threshold of the 25, 40% loss, we've made it, and then that turns that program on for everybody. So, if we made it in the next couple days, we don't need this, keep asking. But just to expand on, the kind of the discussion that was going on about fixing it long term, still gathering your damage data can be used to help find mitigation dollars, to help fund these projects, right? The city, the commission would love to do these types of projects, it always comes down to money, right? Who's got $100 million laying around? So if we can collect this data, that can go a long way towards proving the damage that will be mitigated if we are able to do that project.
So I had another question, a couple of different ways it was asked, but I'm just reading from the fact sheet here that the loans are available for qualifying homeowners, renters, non-farm businesses of all sizes, and non-profit organizations. Loans for personal property damage cover clothing, furniture, and automobiles. Okay? So we put that question to rest. Yes,
Are
sir.
the loans in question, are they SBA issued loans or are they SBA guaranteed loans?
I don't know. Are they issued?
They're issued,
They're issued through them.
So we won't have to go to a third party, a Salem 5, so to speak?
No, what happened is they send somebody in here, the SBA. They will go through your application, they'll work with you, and then they write the loan.
Excuse me, so you said we didn't meet the threshold. What is the number that you guys are estimating at this point where we're at?
So you're talking about for the FEMA threshold?
Yeah, because you clearly haven't declared an emergency and you're saying that it's
Well,
under the
we
10.
We did declare an emergency.
Your town did declare an emergency.
Okay.
The governor has not declared an emergency because we were told that it's not going to meet a $10 million threshold, and just from what we had
I
viewed quickly
understand what you
myself.
said, I
Okay.
heard that. What I'm not hearing is, what is that figure, who calculated that figure, and how are we gonna know when we submit all of our paperwork and all of our damages, when that number is calculated by whom, and how will we know when and if it will be declared that way, so that people like everyone in this room who lost things that they don't feel that they should pay for because it's not their fault that something like this happened. Do you understand what I'm asking? Like, where's that number? You guys are saying we don't have that. Where is it?
The threshold is 10 million.
I know what
Yeah,
the
but what
threshold
was the calculation she's asking?
Well, that's the purpose of this meeting.
Prior calculation, she's saying.
It was based on a door-to-door observance, well, select door-to-door. They couldn't go to literally
I
every
understand,
door.
but they're telling us we're under 10. So they know
No,
that
they're
we're not.
saying their initial estimate
Yeah, so what was
makes
that
it.
estimate, is what she's saying? Was this 8 million? Was it 5 million?
I don't know that they put a dollar figure on it.
So
They
you
just,
said-
no, first of all, it was MEMA who went and did the assessment along with emergency management. If everybody would stop talking, I can tell you what the process was. As they told it to me that night, was that they were going to be going door to door, checking on things like flooded basements. All they could do was to check on approximate dollar amounts. What they came up with, they can tell you in a minute. Now, the way it has to be calculated is based on uninsured losses. So some of them might have been partially insured. Some of them might have been fully insured. Some of them might have had no insurance at all. It was impossible on a visual initial assessment to know that type of information. But they thought, let me please finish. I can't even yell tonight. Just listen.
First off, I'm talking to you, I'm not yelling, okay?
I'm in the middle of talking.
It's what you're saying is you're repeating the same thing over and over again.
No, it
makes
isn't.
no sense. You're telling me that you guys sat there and made this estimate for all of us, but then you're telling me that you guys came up
No.
with you guys made an estimate off the word of what you guys think of, and not speak to the people who actually have the damage done?
No.
It made no sense.
The people from FEMA and emergency
They came out that day.
did an initial.
You were right in that street. You were there for 5-6 hours. I was sitting there in front of my car.
They did, are you still able to hear me?
I am able to hear you,
Good.
and I totally understand.
They did
what you're
an
saying.
initial visual assessment.
And I appreciate that assessment, but I'm.
And based on the limited numbers of areas, based on the limited numbers of houses within that area, it was their initial assessment that it wouldn't reach 10 million. However, for them to know how much insurance there is or is not there, how much actual damage occurred. They had to bring everybody together to fill out these forms so they can see what's there, how much is there. Right now, they're confident that they'll reach the 25 threshold with over 40% of uninsured losses. That's why they can offer up the SBA loans tonight. After further analysis of the damage, if it reaches that 10 million, they can then go to the governor, we can go to the governor, ask him to declare it a disaster so that the federal government kicks in. If the federal government kicks in, that's when grants become available. If it stays only at the state level, and we won't know that until the insurance analysis can be done to whether that 10 million was reached. If it stays at the state level, the SBA is all they can offer. If it gets beyond that, after factoring in the insurance, then the federal kicks in with grants.
I understand all of that, and that wasn't my original question, because I was here for the meeting.
And they will be doing,
So,
they'll be doing.
if you don't mind holding on
analysis.
just a second, I've asked Paul to explain a little bit that night about the initial assessment, what that was done, how it was done, why it's done. Just so everybody knows, usually when an initial assessment's done, it's a quick windshield survey is what they call it, okay? And you go off past history where if you have 3, 4, 5 neighborhoods destroyed, it's never met a $10 million. So you start out that it's probably not going to meet it based on that. And then you pull people together and you take a look like we're doing now and see if we can get there. Okay, but I'm gonna ask Paul to explain that night because he was there and he did some of the stuff.
So the morning the event happened, the first thing we were worried about was public safety. A lot of people have water in their basements. Initially we worked with the Inspectional Services Department, trying to find what houses needed meters pulled before we returned. I don't know how many people lost power, but before we returned electricity to your homes. That was and that was the initial assessment. ISD, and then we were out, I was out from 7 o'clock in the morning until probably 10 or 11 o'clock at night. That was, looking at the neighborhoods where it had the biggest impact. The next day, I had a conversation with MEMA. MEMA came in. We had a conversation with the mayor to set up this meeting. Actually, that was a few days later, but it was Monday. I forget the exact date off the top of my head. And MEMA came in. I took them on a tour of the neighborhoods that were affected. We visited a couple businesses. And we spoke to some of the owners, and we were just, like Alan said, there's no way we can go to every house and ask you guys to give us a list on what you lost. And I know people had a lot of losses, probably a lot of things that are really important to you, stuff that you can't even put a dollar amount on. But we can only go by, look at just a general survey of the neighborhood in consultation with MEMA, who goes to these events all the time, if they thought that we were gonna reach that $10 million mark. Now, at that point, now we're here, and we're giving you the opportunity to provide information as far as what you've lost, to get more specific. And hopefully, people that missed the meeting tonight, you'll be able to provide the information at a later date. We're not at all saying that we that we got the exact amount. It would have been impossible for us in 2 days to gather information, going door to door, getting lists. It's just, and I'm not saying that we even tried to do that. This is just a general assessment of what we think if we thought we were going to reach that $10 million amount.
Hold on. I just want to clarify one more thing too. I heard somebody mention that the city was trying to cover up and people were getting argumentative. Here's the problem though, what a lot of you folks may or may not understand. It was this gentleman and that lady right there who asked the state to come in and provide assistance to try to help out. So they were looking out for your best interest, all right? So before we attack them, understand they were here. They asked, can you please come in and help us? Okay? So they were looking out for your best interest.
But like if I live on the street that
enforce the street cleaning Monday through Friday, so if I park on the wrong side, then they're gonna take me.
Sir, we have nothing to do with street cleaning, I'm sorry.
Storm drains, cigarette butts, I got pictures and videos and everything.
I know, but that's
They
got-
said that he was out there at 7, but this shit started flooding at like, what, 5?
Wait a minute, well, hold on. We're talking about, okay, but hold on for a second. We're talking about two separate issues here. I understand, but there's different departments that deal with that. We're talking about this event, what we did on this day to deal with this event. This is, and I know when people don't want to hear, when you have a disaster, when you have sewage in your basement, you don't really, you care about what's happening to you in your neighborhood, and that's perfectly understandable. But you do have to understand that this wasn't a regional event. This affected just the city of Lynn, and we were on top of it from the very beginning with what we have to
All
offer.
they could have did was just snake the drains just like they did. It took them, what, 20 minutes, and the water was up this high, 20 minutes, and it was all.
It's not that easy, but.
Yeah, the sewer drains still have dirt in them, still to this day.
Go back to your program.
Thank you.
When you say, I'm gonna probably ask them something after too, but when you say low interest rates, is it like below the average that you can borrow from banks, is it below like 3%? Is it 1%, 2%? Do you have any idea what the rate is?
Yeah, it's low, so it's usually a little lower than what the banks can offer, it's usually right at the primary.
So with that,
Last I looked, it's in the threes.
So with that being said, it's like a two issues. If we go and reconstruct the property, like right now I have a property that's completely destroyed, and I'm trying to raise funds. So if I raise my own funds in this process, and I know this is gonna take time for you guys all to work it out, I can take that and get reimbursed through the loan, like I can continue working and borrow money where I have to, and then the SBA will pay back my debtors. Is that what I'm understanding?
As far as, you mean?
So like I have a bill that needs $100,000 of work right now. I have tenants that are right across tore out, they're homeless, for what it's worth, there's lawsuits, there's all kinds of crazy stuff going on. So now I have a bill that's completely useless, is rendered useless, significant damage. So my point is, I need to try to at least move forward and mitigate the rest of the bill. So if I start laying out cash now, and you guys meet this threshold, the money that I lay out, I can use that as part of the loan to get reimbursed, I get the impression.
Yeah, so now, once this program gets turned on, it's just kind of like FEMA comes down, SBA comes down, and they know these programs inside and out. So speaking generally, I will say that they look at the same thing that most bank loans look at, which is loan to value, and if you have enough equity there to go ahead and make it right.
The second part of the last question, I promise to make it quick, is that, Paul and the mayor, obviously, we know what they do, and that night was devastating. But I keep hearing in this room, this is the first time I've sat in these meetings, I keep hearing water, sewer, water, sewer, water, sewer, so obviously I have an issue. So my question to Paul and the mayor is, I've been trying to call water, sewer for 2 weeks now, and I can barely get a conversation. And the conversation I had today, which I don't wish to discuss right now, was unbelievable. Like, they wanted me to pay for stuff that's, anyway, long story. Would it be possible to get the Water Sewer Commission, the engineers in a room together? We could go, my flood in particular had nothing to do with storm drains, it had nothing to do with high tides, it had nothing to do, it was basically housekeeping. Not flood drains, again, I don't want to get into it, but I would love to speak to someone at the Water Sewer Commission and explain.
I'm gonna get an answer for you right now.
That'd be great.
Can you take care of that?
You want to stay around, I'll take anybody's questions after this meeting.
Okay.
We just want to meet.
Do you want to meet with the commissioner? Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ma'am?
I just have a question. So I am my building's a condo, so we have 5 units. How does that work for SBA loan? How do we, as a condo association, how do we file a municipal lender?
So that's 5 different units. Right, so
Well,
that,
one's commercial and then there's.
it doesn't matter, it's 5, it would be 5 separate units. So so that if you had all 5 of you met that 40% uninsured losses, that would be 5, it would be 25 right there.
You don't all 5, it's 5 individual.
Right, so each one of us would have to fill us out under the condo, I mean, how?
Just know as you're each your own.
You're each your own
right?
entity.
It's a unit called the.
So as of right now, I have no clue what our damages, because we're still trying it out, it's still soaking wet, and we're gonna try out. We don't know what our damages, so I'm gonna be adjusting it back to me. I mean, we've done a little bit of work, we still have the money to fix whatever is indicating, so what would I prefer?
You fill it out the best you can. If you don't know what the damage is, give a brief description of the damage, so somebody can at least try to put some kind of a number on it, and make a note that you're waiting for your insurance adjusters. That way we can at least put something to it to say, okay, here's another issue. Looks like it could be between this and this, based on the information.
That does raise a good question, though, about condominiums, because condominiums consist of individual units.
Yes.
And then there are common areas of the condominium.
Right.
Decks, roofs, basements are not owned by a particular owner.
So
Are you from the condo board? You're the condo board?
That's why I was gonna ask this question for you. As an association, can the condo association be another entity
I would file that as a
that
business.
has suffered common area losses?
You got two sections there. You got your individual and then your business for the common areas.
So I would put like 31-33 Grove Street Condo Association.
You would, yeah, you would
Wanted
have,
to do my own separate.
Yes.
That's right, for your unit.
Okay.
We're trying to get as much as we can.
So,
Let-
yeah, so
let them tell us.
if you have 5 units, 5 units within the condo, you've got 5, and then your condo association is a 6th. So we try to make these go as broad as we can, as broad as they will allow us to get there. And if you have a home where you have multiple families living in the same home that are not immediate family members, you can count them each one as a unit.
But the other question is, say for instance, we do qualify and now I think the basement has to be done completely, alarm system, everything is gone. How do we apply for that under association though? Like who's credited and that's the question I don't.
So your condo has its articles of organization,
Yeah.
those kind of things, right? So it's like a business.
But there should be some stipulation in there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly how to work it.
I can shed a little
Who's the
light on
president of
this.
your association? Then you would be probably applying for the condo association on their behalf.
In my past life, I was a condominium attorney, so I advised condominium associations. And I can tell you, most of the time in your articles of organization or in your bylaws, master deed, bylaws, whatever, the board should have the power to borrow money. And then it gets repaid by special assessment if you can't do it out of your condo fees. Some banks have in the past been reluctant to lend to condo associations. I'm assuming you don't have a professional property manager? Okay, all right. But one of the pioneering banks that would allow lending of money to condo associations is Rockland Trust. So if you find yourselves in a situation where you have to borrow money, check with Rockland Trust. I don't have any association with them other
I don't
than,
get Eastern Bank though.
okay? But if there's some reluctance that you find or resistance that you find from any of the local banks, I would suggest starting with them because I know historically they were one of the first to jump out there and lend to associations.
Okay. Sir, I've been asking you to hold for a long time, I'm sorry.
Not a problem. 2 quick questions. Number 1, can the landlord submit forms for tenants that might have lost, or does the tenant have to submit its own forms for any loss?
I believe the tenant has to submit their own.
But again, back to the sort of condo, it could be both, right? So you could have the unit person who lost all their contents.
Okay, but whatever individual has a loss should submit their own form.
Yep.
One other question. What kind of documentation will be needed for the, I mean, just to throw down figures on this, I would assume it's not going to be enough.
So the process is, not dissimilar to trying to get the FEMA declaration. Some are so, you don't have to do a lot of work because it's so overwhelmingly clear that the threshold is going to be met that then you don't have to get down into the weeds of asking for, pictures.
Yeah, but eventually we might need that. Better off, like the floors are gone. Commercial
So if we're
buildings.
trying to scrape find every dollar we can, or they're questioning it, then we would ask for it. But if we get, 60 units that are clearly showing all this loss, they may not be as, the bar is not always the same. Right, so just right now, the form of description, ballpark figures is good. And then And, you know, just to add that, you know, to comment on the FEMA declaration process too, you know, I've been around disasters a long time in a lot of states. Some are so big they declare them before they even hit landfall, right? Think Katrina, it was a disaster before it made landfall. Others take 6 months to get declared because you're trying to scrape together every dollar to make that, in this case, $10 million threshold. So just because we haven't made it yet, or don't have the data to make it yet, does not mean that city and the state are not looking at trying to get it declared. We just got to get that data first. This is a small disaster that may squeak by or may not, but so we need the data.
Sir, I'll come to you next.
So, question on reevaluation. So, my insurance company came out and they measured for an hour and they did everything, and they just simply sent me a rejection letter. So I have no idea what the dollar value is. How are you going to take it to the next step and reevaluate it? Is it just, you know, I'm sure most people are qualified in this room to come up with a dollar value. So will it be another drive-by, or will it be a little more intense?
Give us what you can, because, you know, we can, if it's, you know, square feet, flooding times height, you know, that would be enough that we could get, you know, get ballparks going. Like I said, again, it may be so overwhelmingly clear that it's gonna make it that no one really gets into questioning it, right? So again, I go back to the Ikes or the Katrinas of the world. No one ever sat down and went out and measured every house or business or infrastructure that was destroyed because it was just so clear.
Has it been decided?
No, we're gathering data.
I thought we made it pretty clear that we're coming in and we're trying to help. We're trying to get to these figures that we need to get to, all of them, okay? Nothing's been decided at all. This gentleman and then this lady here.
Real quick, read it in the paper, so forth and so on. Bring insurance, copy of insurance, documentation, pictures, whatever. Are you people gonna collect that from the ones that are here tonight? All documentation that we may have on us now?
Yeah, I mean,
pictures, everything?
If you have stuff tonight
Yes.
that you can submit to us, we'll
Yes.
take it tonight.
Yes.
Just make sure it's clearly marked with your name,
Yes.
okay?
Okay.
If you don't have it tonight, it's not a concern. We just need this is our primary.
the first thing we're gonna do is go through those white sheets, you know, and do the math. That's what we're gonna do first.
Yes, I was one of those ones that 3 years ago was made to get flood insurance. I'm wondering why FEMA was so quick to go in there and make everybody change the map, change the ocean, make everybody get flood insurance. Where were they when we had a disaster?
I can't speak for FEMA.
Yeah,
We're not
they
with
should have been declared a disaster. The deal was when they had a little hurricane or tornado go through, this should have been declared a disaster.
Well, we're still working, you know.
And nobody came to my basement to look. I had 3 feet of water.
The city can't declare a disaster, the city can only declare an emergency. And
Well, it
we,
should have been declared something.
well, we did, we declared it. The very,
Nothing's covered. Last time I had a flood in my cellar was from a fire that the firemen, all the water went to my basement and the insurance canceled. That's over the insurance.
We can't control the insurance either, I'm sorry.
I'm just curious, tied into what he was talking about. I can't wait, I have to pay for my cleanup because of potential mold and situations. How quick are these, if we do get to that point with SBA is available, how quick do they go? Is it like going to a bank for a loan and you get old before they, and ask for more paperwork?
Well, I can't promise you they're not gonna ask for more paperwork, but it is a fairly quick process. If we can get to that point, we'll bring them in, and they'll come right in and they'll start the process immediately, right away. It's not a long delay.
Right now, it's gonna take me 3-4 weeks to clean the place out. I don't know what's potential.
So, you know, the threshold is not, like, if we make the threshold, but if people didn't put their information, it doesn't mean they're not eligible, right? So you don't have to be part of making the threshold to be part of the loan, the availability of the loan, right? So if we can get the threshold, that turns it on to everybody, and then that will be made public of when and where and how. So I would, I don't want to speak for SBA because I'm sure they're deployed all over the country, but in a normal situation, they would come here several times to work.
Ma'am?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I need to go and I just wanted to clarify, I'm also a condo on Monroe Street right next to Diane, and sustained major damage. We also had Danielle from the Demolition Company who was in our building. There was a lot of loss in the basement and the first floor, all the common areas, so it's a little bit more complicated. The units, thank God, are up a little bit higher. So as a condo association, I'm just gonna submit my individual and one for the condo for now. We have a ton of pictures and all that, but I'm assuming that we're trying to gather information
Yeah.
and then we'll have time later to really submit all of the, our master policy denied our coverage. So we were not, our master policy, not the individual units, that's
Right.
something separate, denied us.
So how many units do you have affected?
Well, it's the units, the business unit was affected, and then all of the common spaces, and all of the storage units in the basement. So basement, first floor, and then the demolition company. And there was some damage to some of the corner units that took on a lot of water.
If I give you 3 or 4 of these, will that be enough to have?
I already filled out one for me and one for the condo association, because I am on the.
Do you have anybody else that would?
We have Evergreen Management was here, that's our management company, but
So
they
they'll
left.
fill their own, okay.
So I don't know, I'll check with her though, to see.
There's a woman named Carol that's had.
So, thank you. I don't have a question for MEMA, but it's more like a statement. So in order to get to the 10 million point, people need to know.
Yeah.
So, Ernie, maybe you put something in the Essex Media News, and someone puts it in the Lynn item, and maybe Peter Capano lets all his constituents know, and so on and so forth. Because there's not a lot of people here.
I didn't know that, I found out.
Well,
Yeah,
there's not a lot of people here. So you're not gonna meet the 10 million unless you spread the word. You're not gonna lie, but you're not gonna meet 10 million unless you spread the word. So each and every one of you here have to ask your neighbor next door to fill out one of those forms so that it goes to the FEMA level.
I found out Facebook, and then I.
Thank you.
I go to it.
So,
That's just my comment.
so just to take off on your comment, I know Paul in the mayor's office will work with getting this information out to additional people, making sure there's something in the newspaper.
Something in the newspaper, something
If you have a local public access,
Lynn City Hall website, Lynn Water and Sewer.
if you have a local public access, put it through there. If you have any bills going out soon, most people probably just leave those closed. Maybe put it on the envelope so they at least see it, but if you have any correspondence going out to folks in that section, maybe they can do up a flyer and have the mail deliver it to those neighborhoods that were affected. Excuse me.
Excuse me. I just want to add to that, we have a lot of bilingual speaking people and a lot of Hispanic people in this town and Asian people that don't speak English and don't understand what's going on. Those are the people that were affected also, that need to get a letter and need to know what's going on so they can get help and help us out too.
Absolutely. So when your office puts that out, if you do a newsletter that you have the mail delivered to that neighborhood, maybe do one part in English, one part in Spanish.
Another thing is, Carol had suggested talking to your neighbors. That's a great idea. Because this meeting will have ended, I think, by the time everybody leaves and goes back to their homes. But anybody who wants to drop off a completed form with the mayor's office, they can just bring it in to us, and I'll make sure that it gets over to MEMA so that it can be included in the calculation. But just drop it off
Can we
with
drop it
somebody
off
at
the
the
fire
mayor's.
station too?
Not, that's probably, no, it's
He
City
just
Hall.
bring it to us, will be the central collection desk.